There will come a day, not today, not tomorrow, but a day when he realizes what he walked away from, and that day he'll come back, not with excuses, but with regret, and you'll already be standing in your power. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes love leaves not because you weren't enough, but because someone wasn't ready to rise to the level your heart required. And that's not your loss, that's their lesson. You see, life has a strange way of revealing truth. When you stop chasing someone, you give them the space to face themselves. When you stop explaining your worth, you allow them to feel the emptiness that your presence once filled. And when you walk forward, confidently, quietly, gracefully, that's when everything shifts. He might have thought you'd wait forever. He might have thought you'd always be available, always be patient, always be understanding. But the moment you choose yourself, the moment you elevate, the moment you step into the life you were meant for, there are moments in life when someone's rejection feels like a personal verdict, as if every quality you carry, every effort you made, every ounce of love you poured suddenly becomes invalid. But that is an illusion created by disappointment, not truth. The truth is your value was never in their hands. It never belonged to their judgment, their fleeting attention, or their inconsistent affection. Your worth is rooted in who you are, not in who chooses to stay or leave. One person's inability to recognize your greatness does not dim the greatness itself. Just because they were too distracted, too broken, too immature, or too blind to see it, doesn't mean it wasn't there. People see only as deeply as they've grown. Someone who cannot see their own value will struggle to see yours. Someone who is not healed will underestimate what you bring. Someone who isn't ready for real love will treat a blessing like a burden. And when they walk away, you might believe you failed. You might think you weren't enough, or that you lacked something. But often the opposite is true. You were more than they could handle. You were the mirror they weren't ready to look into, the standard they weren't prepared to rise to, the depth they weren't equipped to receive. Their departure says nothing about your worth. It only reveals the limits of their perception. Your value is constant, even when unappreciated. Think of a diamond lying in the dirt. It doesn't stop being a diamond just because someone mistook it for a stone. Its shine doesn't fade because someone walked past it. True worth doesn't vanish in the absence of recognition. It simply waits for the right eyes to see it. Your heart, your compassion, your loyalty, your strength, those are rare qualities. But rarity is often misunderstood before it is admired. Many people do not know how to handle what is pure, steady, and real. Sometimes they must lose it to understand its weight. And sometimes you must lose them to remember your own. When a relationship ends or when someone pulls away, it's natural to question yourself. You replay conversations, moments, mistakes, trying to locate the reason. But understand this, love is not a performance and you are not on trial. You do not have to earn the right to be appreciated. You do not have to shrink yourself to be understood. You do not have to prove your worth to a person who hasn't yet realized their own. Your value exists independent of external validation. Imagine the confidence you would carry if you stopped measuring yourself through someone else's confusion. Imagine the peace you would feel if you stopped seeking closure that only life, not another person, can provide. That is where real self-worth begins inside you, not around you. Sometimes people walk away because life is protecting you from their inability to love you. Sometimes their departure is a redirection, not a rejection. And while the hurt may feel personal, the truth is rooted in something much bigger. The universe removes people who cannot go where you are going. It clears space for growth. It pulls away what blocks your path. It subtracts what cannot support the next version of you. And if someone could not recognize the treasure you are, that is not your burden to carry. It is their opportunity to reflect. You cannot force someone to appreciate what they never learned to value. You cannot convince someone to treat you better if they haven't chosen to treat themselves better first. There will come a time when you look back and realize that the person who left did not take your worth with them. They may have taken memories, moments, or dreams you once held, but your value stayed. It stayed in your heart, in your character, in your spirit. And as you grow, as you heal, as you rediscover your confidence, you will understand something powerful. Their inability to see your worth did not lower it. It simply freed you to meet someone who can. Someone who recognizes you immediately, not eventually. Someone who understands your depth instead of running from it. Someone who sees you clearly without needing to lose you first. There comes a moment in life when holding on becomes heavier than letting go. You feel the weight of disappointment settling into your spirit, the exhaustion of being the only one fighting, the ache of loving someone who does not love with the same depth. Yet for so long you stay. Not because the situation is good, but because you keep hoping it will become what you once imagined. You try to fix, to understand, to heal, to compromise, even when the other person does none of the same. But walking away is not a sign of weakness. It is the bravest step a wounded heart can take. It is choosing yourself when someone else has stopped choosing you. It is ending the cycle before it breaks you completely. And once you take that step, the world around you begins to shift. You see, life cannot give you new blessings while your hands are full of old pain. When you cling to something that keeps hurting you, you block what is meant to help you grow. You delay the arrival of the right people, the right opportunities, the right experiences. Walking away isn't just about ending a chapter. It's about clearing space for a better one. It's saying, I deserve a love that doesn't require me to lose myself. It's acknowledging that peace is more valuable than any temporary comfort. And once you release what drains you, you make room for what restores you. The moment you let go of what is breaking your heart, you create space for what will rebuild it. But letting go is rarely easy. It requires unlearning patterns you've lived with for too long. It requires facing the fear of being alone, the fear of starting over, the fear of the unknown. It demands honesty, not about the other person, but about yourself. Because the truth is, sometimes we hold on because we fear that what we lose will never be replaced. Yet, what if the universe is trying to replace it with something far greater? What if the pain you're holding on to is the very thing blocking your blessings? Walking away teaches you that discomfort is temporary, but self-respect lasts forever. And when you choose freedom over familiarity, you begin to understand your own strength. When you let go, you don't just create space for new people. You create space for a new version of yourself. You rediscover parts of you that were silenced. Your laughter grows louder. Your confidence returns. Your energy shifts. You begin to move differently, think differently, see differently. And slowly, you start to recognize how much of yourself you had to shrink in order to fit into a situation that was never meant for you. Walking away becomes a reunion with your own identity. It is the moment you reclaim the parts of you that love deeply, give generously, and dream boldly without being taken for granted. As time passes, something interesting happens, clarity arrives. You begin to understand why things didn't work out. You realize that the things you prayed to keep would have limited you. You see that the person you wanted was not aligned with the life you are growing into. And you understand that walking away was not the ending. it was the beginning of something far more meaningful. Life is intentional. It removes what cannot go where you are destined to go. Pain becomes a teacher, not a punishment, and doors that once felt like losses reveal themselves to be protection. You begin to appreciate the space you created, because in that space, something better can finally enter. And eventually, in that open space where pain used to sit, something beautiful begins to bloom. Peace, strength, growth, new opportunities, new connections, a deeper understanding of yourself. You learn to trust the process, to trust timing, to trust that anything meant for you will never require you to suffer for it. Walking away is not abandonment. It is alignment. It is the heart's way of making room for what is meant to stay, not what is meant to hurt. And in that space, the life you were meant for finally has room to rise. There is something profoundly honest about silence. When noise fades, when constant conversations stop, when the calls aren't coming and the messages no longer light up your screen, that is when the real truth begins to show itself. Silence is not empty. It is full of answers. It exposes what was hidden behind excuses, distractions, and emotional chaos. In silence, you begin to see who genuinely cares and who is simply entertained by your presence. You see who checks on you without being prompted and who disappears when you stop reaching out. Distance removes the fog that love or attachment once created, and what remains is clarity. Raw, undeniable clarity. When you step back, even for a moment, you invite reality to reveal itself. You give people the space to show their true intentions without your effort holding things together. Distance is like a magnifying glass. It enlarges the truth. If someone values you, they feel the absence immediately. They notice the shift. They reach out. They try. If someone was only benefiting from your availability, you're giving nature your attention. Your silence exposes their lack of effort. And that truth can be painful because it shows you that some people were connected to you not out of love, but out of convenience. But as painful as it is, that honesty is necessary for your growth. Silence also teaches you about yourself, your needs, your fears, your patterns. When there is no one else to convince or comfort, you face your own heart directly. You begin to understand what you tolerated, what you ignored, and what you accepted because you were afraid to lose someone. In the quiet, you hear your intuition clearly, the voice that was drowned out by emotional noise. You hear the truth your heart whispered long before your mind was ready to accept it. You begin to understand why you felt drained, why you felt uneasy, why something felt off even when you tried to convince yourself otherwise. Silence doesn't lie, it reveals. Distance, too, has a way of reshaping perspective. When you're too close to a situation, emotions blur the truth. You see what you want to see, not what is actually there. But when you step back, you gain a wider view. You notice patterns, the inconsistencies, the unmet needs, the red flags you excused. You also notice your own strength, your resilience, your ability to stand alone. Distance gives you the emotional room to analyze without pressure, to understand without attachment, and to heal without interference. And sometimes the very space that feels like rejection becomes the space where you find your freedom. Another powerful truth revealed by silence and distance is this: people treat you based on what you allow. When you step back, you stop enabling behaviors that hurt you. You disrupt the cycle of giving too much and receiving too little. You stop pouring into someone who is not pouring back. And once that cycle breaks, you see everything clearly. You see how much of the relationship relied on your effort. You see who steps up when you step back and who vanishes because they were never truly invested. Distance doesn't ruin relationships. It reveals the ones that were never solid to begin with. And eventually, silence leads you to acceptance. Not the kind forced by pain, but the kind that comes from understanding. Acceptance that some people were not meant to stay. Acceptance that their presence taught you lessons their absence confirmed. Acceptance that you don't need constant communication to feel whole. You only need truth. Distance gives you the emotional clarity to separate attachment from love, desire from compatibility, and longing from reality. In that clarity, you find the strength to move forward, not because you no longer care, but because you finally see the truth for what it is. And truth, once revealed, cannot be unseen. Heartbreak has a way of bringing you face to face with parts of yourself you have ignored for too long. It forces you to confront wounds you never healed, stories you never challenged, and beliefs you quietly accepted about your worth. As painful as it feels, heartbreak is often the beginning of a deeper transformation. It strips away illusions, exposes truths, and pushes you into a version of yourself you would have never discovered without the pain. When you choose growth instead of bitterness, healing instead of resentment, you turn heartbreak into a doorway that leads back to yourself. And that path, as difficult as it may be, is the most powerful journey you will ever take. Self-growth begins the moment you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What does this teach me about myself?" That shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of replaying the past, you begin understanding your patterns. You see where you overgave, where you ignored red flags, where you settled, and where you poured love into someone who didn't know how to receive it. You learn what your boundaries should be, because now you know exactly what happens when you don't have them. Growth shows you that heartbreak wasn't a punishment. It was a mirror. And through that mirror, you begin to rebuild your identity with intention rather than desperation. When you start investing in yourself, something remarkable happens. You take your power back. You stop waiting for someone else to validate you, notice you, or choose you. You start choosing yourself consistently, boldly, unapologetically. You work on your mind, your emotional health, your future, your goals. You develop new habits, new routines, new confidence. The pain that once felt unbearable becomes fuel. You begin to rise, slowly at first, then stronger, clearer, more grounded. And as you grow, you realize that the version of you who once cried, begged, or overgave is gone. A new you is emerging, one who no longer settles for half love, half effort, or half respect. Self-growth also changes the way you see relationships. You stop romanticizing potential and start paying attention to reality. You stop mistaking intensity for love, inconsistency for passion, and emotional chaos for connection. You learn that real love is steady, loyal, and safe, not confusing. You begin to value peace more than passion, alignment more than attention, consistency more than promises. And as you evolve, the people who once had access to you no longer fit into your new standards. Heartbreak teaches you the difference between someone who wants you and someone who values you. And that understanding becomes one of the most powerful tools you carry into your future. As you continue to grow, the pain that once felt like it would break you becomes the very thing that builds you. You look at yourself differently, with pride, with gentleness, with understanding. You realize you survived what once felt impossible. You see how your strength expanded, how your vision sharpened, how your heart became wiser. And slowly, the narrative changes. You stop seeing heartbreak as something that destroyed you and start seeing it as something that awakened you. You stop wishing things were different and begin appreciating the way things unfolded. Because without that loss, you would have never discovered the depth of your resilience. And without that resilience, you would have never grown into the person you are becoming. Eventually, self-growth leads you to a profound truth. Healing is not about becoming who you were before the heartbreak. It is about becoming someone stronger than you've ever been. You're no longer motivated by proving anything to the person who hurt you. You're motivated by becoming someone you're proud of. Growth becomes the quiet victory, the kind that requires no audience, no validation, no applause, the kind that transforms you from the inside out. And with every step you take toward your best self, you rise further above the pain that once tried to define you. Because the most powerful response to heartbreak is not revenge, not anger, not regret. It is evolution. There is a truth about human nature that reveals itself only after you walk away. People begin to feel the weight of your absence long before they ever admit it. When you were present, consistent, loving, and giving, they became accustomed to your energy. Your emotional support became their comfort. Your patience became their stability. Your kindness became their expectation. They started to assume you'd always be there, always answer, always forgive, always fill the silence with warmth. But when that presence disappears, when the calls stop, the messages fade, the energy shifts, that is when reality hits them. They begin to feel the void created by your absence, and the very comfort they once took for granted becomes the emptiness they now struggle with. Absence has a way of reminding people of what their pride ignored. When you step back, the imbalance becomes undeniable. They notice the sudden lack of attention, the missing emotional safety, the disappearance of someone who understood them without judgment. People often do not appreciate emotional security until it's no longer there to hold them together. They do not recognize the weight of your efforts until they feel the heaviness of losing them. What once seemed ordinary becomes unforgettable. What once felt guaranteed becomes irreplaceable. Absence forces them to confront what they overlooked: your value, your presence, your impact. And it is in that confrontation that regret begins to grow. There is a moment, quiet, subtle, undeniable, when the person who once chose distance begins to crave the connection they walked away from. They replay old conversations. They revisit memories. They scroll through photos. They think about the times you were there for them, even when they weren't there for you. They remember how easy it was to talk to you, how deeply you listened, how gently you understood. They begin comparing others to you, only to realize that what they thought they could replace cannot be duplicated. The absence you created becomes the mirror they can't avoid, reflecting the truth they weren't ready to face. Losing you was not freedom. It was a mistake they didn't recognize until it was too late. And as their awareness grows, they begin to understand something they never acknowledged before. Your presence carried emotional value they never learned to respect. You weren't just someone who cared, you were someone who made them better, calmer, more grounded. You were the one who brought emotional balance into their life. But when someone becomes accustomed to love without earning it, they forget that not everyone gives with the same depth. Absence teaches them that love can disappear when taken for granted. It shows them that effort must be matched, that connection must be nurtured, that people who are good to the heart don't remain forever when neglected. They begin to realize that losing someone rare is far more painful than keeping someone temporary. Absence does something else. Something even more powerful. It breaks the illusion that they were the only one with choices. When you were present, they believed you would never leave. When you gave endlessly, they assumed your love was unconditional. But when you walk away, they see the truth: you were always choosing them, even when they weren't choosing you back. And now that you've chosen yourself, they must face the consequences of their indifference. Suddenly, the person they thought would always be there becomes the person they can no longer reach. The silence becomes a message. The distance becomes a boundary. And the regret becomes a lesson they can't escape. Eventually, the truth settles in their mind with a heaviness they can't ignore. They didn't lose someone who needed them. They lost someone who cared for them in a way they may never experience again. They lost someone who brought peace, stability, and depth into their world, someone who would have stayed if they had simply reciprocated. And that realization, born from absence, slowly turns into longing, then regret, and finally a desire to return, because people always come back when they feel the emptiness left behind by the one they took for granted. There comes a point in every healing journey where the question shifts from, will they come back, to, do I even want them back? That shift is where true power begins. Because for so long, your emotions were tied to the fear of losing them, the fear of abandonment, the fear of being alone, the fear that you would never find a connection like that again. But as time passes, as growth happens, as clarity rises, you begin to realize something profound. You are not powerless. You are not waiting. You are not stuck in the past. You are evolving. And with that evolution comes a new kind of strength, the strength to choose, the strength to decide whether the person who once broke you is someone who deserves access to the version of you that pain helped create. When someone comes back, they often expect to find you in the same emotional place they left you. They expect the same softness, the same availability, the same unguarded loyalty. But they don't realize that time changes people, especially those who use heartbreak as fuel. When you heal, you gain perspective. You see the relationship for what it really was, not what you wished it could have been. You remember the red flags, the ignored boundaries, the repeated disappointments. You recall the nights you cried alone, the moments you felt unseen, the countless times you tried harder than anyone should. And suddenly, their return isn't flattering, it's revealing. It shows that life has brought them back full circle, but it also shows that you now have the authority to decide whether your heart stays open or closed. Choosing whether the past deserves a seat in your future is not about revenge, it's about alignment. Your future requires peace, stability, and reciprocity. It requires commitment, maturity, honesty, and emotional effort. If the past comes knocking and it cannot offer those things, then letting them back in would not be love. It would be self-betrayal. Growth teaches you that not every familiar face belongs in your next chapter. Some people are meant to be lessons, not lifelong companions. Some connections are meant to help you discover your worth, not carry you into your destiny. And once you learn that, you stop making decisions based on loneliness and start making them based on self-respect. The real power lies in understanding that you are no longer obligated to reopen a door simply because someone finally realized what they lost. Their regret is not your responsibility. Their longing is not your invitation. Their desire to return is not a guarantee that they have changed. Many people come back because they miss the comfort you provided, not because they are ready to offer the love you deserved. They come back because life humbled them, not because they grew. And it is your job, your power, to discern the difference. Healing has made you wiser. Experience has made you cautious. Growth has made you selective. And now the question is no longer, do they want me? But do their actions align with the future I'm building? As you move forward, you begin to realize that forgiving the past and allowing the past back into your life are not the same thing. Forgiveness frees your heart, but wisdom protects it. You can let go of the pain, release the anger, accept the lessons, and still refuse to reopen the chapter. That isn't bitterness, That's maturity. That is understanding that your future cannot thrive in the same soil where your past once hurt you. New beginnings require new boundaries. New love requires new standards. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is close a door that life keeps trying to reopen simply because you know that what's behind it is no longer aligned with who you are becoming. Eventually, you realize that the greatest power you possess is the ability to choose your future with intention. You are no longer controlled by emotional desperation or fear of loss. You are guided by clarity, self-worth, and inner peace. The past may come back, but it does not dictate your destiny. You do. And as you stand in that place of strength, you finally understand the truth. The real question was never whether he would return. The real question was always whether you would still want him when he did. And so, as you stand here now, stronger than you've ever been, remember this: you were never waiting for someone to return. You were waiting to return to yourself. You are not defined by who walked away. You are defined by who you became after they did. The world has a way of circling things back, but you have a way of rising above what once tried to break you. If he comes back, let him see the strength he never recognized. Let him see the glow he never valued. Let him see the power he once overlooked. But understand this: you don't owe your future to the person who mishandled your past. You owe your future to the woman you are becoming. And when life brings people back, the question is no longer, do they want you? The real question is, have they grown enough to stand beside the version of you that pain created, or will you keep walking forward without them? Because the truth is simple. You were always the blessing, and now you finally know it.